Okay, here we are. So Brendan Wall here with GameItAll.com. We got Jennifer Corcoran and Johnny Corcoran, brother and sister duo, writer, director, producer of a new film available on demand. Is it available on demand right now?
No, it's not. We're still in, you could say, the festival stretch.
Okay. Well, available on demand at some point in the near future. Entitled "She Sings to the Stars."
This year.
This year, okay. Yeah, because I know it had toured the festival recently, because I'd heard that you took it to Toronto and Vermont as well.
And Montreal, and now New York City.
Okay. All right, so before I get into that, I just want to say thanks for joining me, Johnny and Jennifer.
It's our pleasure.
Awesome. So I just want to, before we get started too specifically into the movie, I just want to ask Johnny and then Jennifer or whoever. Now, did you start kind of on your own path, or pretty much right from the beginning, where you we're going to work together, make movies together? Is that something that came later, or?
Well, I'll answer first, and John, you can add to this. I was trained as a director in the theater, so from really starting when I was about 18, I started moving in that direction. Our mother made Super 8 films and 16 millimeter films when we were kids. So we were very aware of filmmaking, and we're both always, real cinephiles. When at one point we lived in New York City at the same time together, we had a passionate vision to work together to make films. And we were in the throes of setting up a production company and coming up with ideas for stories. So that's where it all started, and then life took over. We went our separate ways in terms of leaving New York and pursuing different things, but always had this lingering connection around, we need to make films. And it wasn't until about 2010 that I think we picked up the thread of that conversation again, with a lot more seriousness, because I actually proposed a film idea to him, and we were off and running. It wasn't the one that we ended up making, but it was enough to break open that conversation again and actually move forward.
Okay.
John, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I would just add that, this promise was made back in the 80s, and when Jennifer called me, she actually had a script. It wasn't just an idea. It was a script, and it was a much bigger film than one could make as a first-time filmmaker. So I gave her the guidance that it really had to be 3 characters and 3 locations, because that's probably what we could raise money to do.
Yeah.
So that's how we, and very quickly, I think she came around in like 6 weeks with sort of the flesh of a new idea. Of course, it took much longer to develop the script, but we were sort of off and running.
Well, actually, okay. I'll just add a little piece, because I've been writing about this process recently. And the way I remember it is he and I were having a Skype conversation, because I was living in Portugal at the time, and he was in Vermont, and I had sent him all the material. And when he said to me, great idea, but it's way too big, 3 characters, 3 locations, it was like he lobbed a lead weight through Skype and burst my balloon. I knew exactly what he meant. He was absolutely right. At that moment, I had a very strong impression of smelling sagebrush, and I saw the desert Southwest. I had lived in the desert Southwest. I'd never had any ideas of writing about it, but that was like a first impression. coming, right on the heels of his saying, no way can we make this large film. We will actually make that large film, though, because that first film will probably be the third one that we make in the cycle.
Okay, so the larger film you had originally planned was a completely different plot, story, everything from the one that you made. She Sings to the Stars.
Completely.
Yeah.
And I can give you a couple of clues. It involves the city of Rome, Italy.
Okay,
it's a period piece. It takes place in 1968.
Yeah, that does sound quite a bit different.
Quite a bit different, yeah.
So would you say, so you mentioned briefly there that your mother was making Super 8 films when you were younger. Was that definitely then something that sparked that was definitely the thing that sparked your interest then in film?
It could be. I mean, I think it's fair to say, John, I think you'd agree, we come from a fairly theatrical matrilineal lineage. Our mother was a very theatrical person. She had acted in the theater when she was younger. She had this passion for film and a colossal imagination. And our grandmother acted as well. So, and my mother was also directing plays when we were kids. So I think we kind of came by that fairly.
Okay, so didn't just start with you guys.
No. It's a lineage, I think. An
Now, how did the story of that? I'm not gonna. If you want to explain the story a little bit of she Sings to the Stars, and then maybe tell me how that kind of came to you and how you put that down on paper.
Well, briefly, I mean, for your listeners who won't have seen the film, I'll just tell you, Mabel, who is Mabel is a Native American grandmother who lives alone, tending her drought-ravaged corn in the desert Southwest. We shot the film in New Mexico. Her half-Mexican grandson, Third, dreams of making it big in L.A. He's a dancer. But his plans change dramatically when he comes to his grandmother's house to collect these traditional dolls that he wants to sell for a high price in the tourist market. And Lyle is an older man. He's a faded magician, down on his luck, traveling from L.A. with a white rabbit and the promise of one last gig, and a dream that he's had since he was a boy to be able to magically make himself disappear. And, as life would have it, his radiator boils over. He's stuck in the middle of the desert outside Mabel's house. And so the two men they have to yield to the desert and to her way of being. And through that, they discover a much greater creative capacity than they might have imagined. So that's a thumbnail.
And how did that idea, the idea of that story, come to you?
Well, after that initial impression, when Johnny and I were talking on Skype and had to kibosh the first idea, after the initial impression of that sage and seeing the desert, I had a dream. And this elderly native woman appeared, and she was sitting on the edge of a wooden cart, and she was quite small and quite thin, unlike our wonderful actress in the film who inhabits the character. And she looked at me and said, "It's time to sing the song. Listen, it'll take you 4 years." And I remember charging off an email to Johnny about this. And that was really the starting point. And I can't say that I was as fortunate as some writers are, where it all comes at once. It came in bits and pieces, and there were dry times when I didn't know what I was doing. And then other times waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning with this light on in my brain and scribbling notes left, right, and center. And I did create three life-size characters made out of newspaper. I went to a charity shop and bought them clothes and dressed them, and these three bodies lived with me in my workspace for the time that it took to actually finish the story. And, you know, they I can't say they came to life and danced around the space, but there was a presence there, and I think that in some mystical way they kind of fed me the story. So.
Yeah, and that's a very unique way. That's a very unique answer.
Yeah, well, I mean, you don't really know what works or what doesn't. You sort of do it, and there's almost a ritual to doing it. You know, coming into the space and knowing that these three people are waiting, and they're waiting to continue the conversation. And sometimes I needed to move them around the space. You know, Mabel would be sitting on this little couch I have, and her grandson sitting next to her, and then sometimes he needed to be sitting on the other side of the room, and the magician move in a little bit closer to her. And that, you know, change of dynamic would open up a space for me to consider something else. But it very much came in chunks. And it was a little daunting, you know, because I had all these pieces, and sometimes I would see an image or I'd hear a piece of dialogue and hold on to that. But I didn't have the whole thing coming together until I was on a flight to go and meet Johnny in New Mexico. He was expecting the script to be finished, and we were meeting with our line producer to figure out what the budget was. And I had that flight to pull it all together, and it came flying out, and I couldn't stop because I was afraid if I stopped, the tap would turn off or I'd run out of battery. So, yeah, that was sort of the beginning of the first round of official drafts, I guess.
Okay. Now, I also want to mention, too, I just want to stress this because, you know, there's the thing where people say, you know, a film with a very large cast can be very, very hard to hold together and hard to maintain interest in all the characters. But I have to say, on the flip side, a film with a very small cast, because there are three people in the movie. I find it's just as difficult because you have to maintain an audience's interest for almost 2 hours, right?
Yeah.
So what were some of the challenges that came with that? Like trying to it's a very interesting story, but it can be very difficult to maintain interest and attention with three characters. So were there any difficulties with that?
Well, I think, you know, there's the artistic director at the Queen's Film Festival, I think, really put his finger on it, that you have to, as an audience member, you have to be willing to take time. And we did take time in the film. I don't think it's easy to maintain interest, but I am asking the audience to almost like give themselves up, to go through what these people are going through almost in real time. Yeah, it was very challenging.
Yeah.
To be honest.
No, and I definitely think you pulled it off. I just know that it could be. I've seen a few films over the years with a smaller cast, and some of them don't quite pull it off because I notice it can be very difficult. It's just very much the same as the opposite, right? When you have a movie with a large cast, it's hard to get everyone something, right?
Yeah. I was reminded in maybe perhaps more surreal moments that there was something in a very weird way that reminded me, and maybe this is something that really only makes sense to me, that sometimes Didi and Gogo from Waiting for Godot would come to mind when I think of Lyle and Third.
Okay.
You know, they're not old friends. but there is this sense of these two men being stuck. And, I can't go on. I'll go on. I must go on. And there's nothing to be done. And there's nowhere to go. And waiting for Godot will hold you at the edge of your seat from beginning to end. And there's not a lot that's happening. So, yeah, it was tricky.
I think you should also mention about rehearsing, though, and sort of the bond that you helped develop between Mabel and Third, and then just also, well, why don't you tell that story and then how Lyle literally appeared like a day before we started shooting.
Yeah, well, our actress who played Mabel had done a little bit of college theater, but really was not a seasoned actress. And the actor who plays Third was in a few episodes of Breaking Bad, but he's also not very seasoned. And I felt it was really important to establish between the actors that rapport between grandmother and grandson. So I had the privilege, really, of having the two of them in rehearsal for 2 weeks before production. And they got chummier and chummier and very cozy. She became very grandmotherly. And then 2 days before we started shooting, Lyle, Larry Cedar, the actor who plays Lyle the magician, came into rehearsal. And
yeah, you should note he's a professional actor.
Yeah.
In Deadwood.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Larry's biggest, most recognizable part would be Deadwood as Leon, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the minute he came in, he completely disrupted the energy in the rehearsal hall. She got her back up. She was very defensive. She started talking to him in some respects like a white man. It's like, who do you think you are, white man? This is the way we do things here. It was perfect. It was perfect. And Larry, being a seasoned professional actor, really raised the bar for Jesus. And so immediately there was a bit of competition, well, not on Larry's part, but I think for Jesus there was this male, testosterone race in a great way because it fit the parts perfectly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like a little bit of friendly back and forth, right?
Yeah.
Now, I want to mention something. I saw a comment from you, Jennifer. I think it was on the website for your film, or a website talking about your film. You said that your goal was to make films about women and their relationship with the indefinable.
Yeah.
Can you just elaborate on that just a little bit?
Yes. John, do you want to say something first, or because I may dive in for a while?
Go ahead.
Well, where to begin? Well, I was born and raised in Italy on Fellini, Rossellini, Bertolucci, Pasolini, Visconti, all these very large. Have we lost John?
I think he's still
No,
there.
I'm here.
Are you still there, John? Okay.
Oh, okay. All these large, iconic male filmmakers. And I was very aware of the fact that, there was Lina Wertmüller and there was Liliana Cavani, and that was kind of it. And I think all my whole growing up and going through school, which I did well, I had a sense that there was something that didn't quite fit, and I didn't know what it was. until years later, and I had a daughter of my own who was in college, and she asked me at my birthday one night, do you think men and women perceive differently? How does this affect young girls in a school system primarily designed by a male mind? What do we do with our feminine natures? What is feminine nature? Do we even know what a non-male trained female mind feels like or what it can produce? And it dawned on me that what is missing is our native feminine voices, and that we'd also forgotten the feminine nature of the earth and our innate relationship to it. And I think that's why we are where we are on our planet today, is that we are out of balance when it comes to our feminine nature. And ironically, it doesn't just have to do with women. It has to do with men as well, because I think we all have a male and a female, a masculine and a feminine nature. And so it's something that we are both very interested in exploring, the nature of femininity. And so that was what was behind that. And around the indefinable, again, that is what I describe as the indefinable is the intangible. It's the mystery. I think we've become very box and label oriented, and we pray at the altar of science and technology, and we've forgotten the magic of wonder, the power of mystery, and how all life is interconnected. So that's part of, to start off with She Sings to the Stars, that we're exploring through the character of Mabel.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, great. I just wanted to get a little bit more on that, because I read that and then I was just really curious to hear what you had to say on that. Now, Johnny, as far as the production side of things goes, what was the process of getting this? Once the film was wrapped and once it was all done, what was the process of getting this film around to different festivals and presenting it in that way?
Well, there are always, struggles with money and how can I say, crew. We had times where, and the one that comes to mind was right after we'd finished post. We had to wait a year before we could get our soundtrack finished. And that's very tough because we didn't have the money to be able to get it done. And so that did set us back, just because, once the film is out of post, it's kind of ready to go, but it really wasn't ready to go. And we submitted to festivals early, and I think in retrospect maybe we should have hung on, but I think the nature of filmmaking is that once it's out of post, it's got to keep moving. And so we did that, and we ended up getting enough feedback, I think, from festivals and from festivals primarily, because we were really trying to understand why our film wasn't getting traction. We were hearing it was going, to sort of the final rounds in some cases, but not being selected. And what we learned was that people found the film either, too slow or too long. So we decided to recut it. And which is always a difficult choice because, again, it's you have to spend more money, you're taking more time, and once we recut it, though, we suddenly started getting traction, and right now it feels like the little fire that we've started is beginning to grow, and more people are seeing the film and talking about it, sharing about it. And we're beginning to get some critical feedback that's very positive. And so it's been a really interesting journey, and one that requires enormous amount of patience.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, because as you know too, I mean the nature. I mean, our next big challenge is distribution.
Yes.
Nobody knows how many, but let's say 20,000 films get made every year, and if maybe 100 get distributed, the numbers are just really, really low, and filmmakers really have to take charge of distributing their own film. So we're about to launch a crowdfunding campaign through Seed and Spark, basically to engage our audience to help support us to move this film out into the world. People have come up to us after screening the film, and they're very emotional about seeing a film like this. They're touched really deeply. They've told Jennifer, please don't stop making films. The world needs you, needs your voice. And I think there's something very deep about this film that's kind of meeting people in a way that Hollywood movies don't.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a struggle because you have to kind of do it all by yourself. And it's not like it was maybe 20, 25 years ago where you'd find a distributor and they'd open the film in a number of cities, and there was just a lot more. How can I say? There's less and less interest on the part of the distributor community to take risks. They've become very risk averse, and understandably, things have changed. And
yeah.
Online is now really bigger and bigger and bigger, but it's a challenge to figure out how to sort of make your money back as a filmmaker, unless you get really big. I mean, if you get really big, there's no problem. But it's a very crowded field, and so it's really about building almost like an audience member at a time. Finding people out there who respond and really take a personal interest.
Mm-hmm. Yes, for sure, and it's even hard in some cities to even get like a smaller mainstream film released, because where I am here in New Brunswick, a lot of if it's not like a Michael Bay movie, good luck getting it out here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Well, apparently, too, that there are fewer and fewer what they used to call art house cinemas.
Yeah, we don't have any out here. The closest thing, I will tell you, the closest thing we have to that out here is the university in town does a Monday night film series. And they try to get a movie that's not necessarily released in theaters, and like 99% of the time it is an art house film. So there is an effort to try to push that, but not as much as you'd like to see, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think it raises the question about the future of cinema in general. If everybody is happy to download or stream on their laptops or even on their tablets or phones, what is the future of cinema? Is it a medium that is relegated only to multi-million-dollar Hollywood epics, or bells and whistles and gimmicks and special effects? Or is there? It's hard to know what people really want, and I think we're struggling to get this, even a limited theatrical release, because the desert itself is a character, the environment. There are a lot of wide shots. It's immersive. You want the audience to go into that place and feel what it feels.
Yeah, I was gonna say the film essentially has four characters because the desert is used.
That's right.
In a manner that makes it a character,
That's
right?
right. And, you know, it's hard to convey that when your audience is looking at it on a tablet or on a smartphone. And so I don't know I don't know if you have any thoughts about the future of the cinema experience. Because these art houses are closing, and you've got your multiplexes, and they're relying entirely on large box office revenue from, you know, sequels and big blockbusters, you know?
Yeah.
So where does that leave all the other visions?
Yeah, I mean, we have a very cinematic film, and, you know, again, it's something we've heard a lot from audiences who really describe watching the film as an experience, because, like Jennifer says, it's especially on a big screen, it's really immersive, and with surround sound, you know, the soundtrack for this film was made by Michael Stearns, who did the soundtracks for Baraka and Samsara. I don't know if you've seen or heard of those films, but you know, it's an amazing soundtrack, and it envelops you. So, like Jennifer says, you really are in the desert, and the night sky is huge and deep, and that's an experience. And like she says, it just very flat on a small screen.
And we've had people come back and say that it's almost like the desert reaches out and grabs you, and that it stays with people. And, you know, I'd say it's nothing we created. It's that we had the camera rolling, and then Michael created this beautiful soundscape of the desert. So that character begs to come to life on a big screen. And I know that there are other films out there that are cinematic and are crying for a big screen and a big space. And that's where it's a very tricky time with distribution, because everybody's kind of pushing to go, you know, stream it, VOD platforms, and
I'll tell you what, I'll never understand how someone can watch a movie on a cell phone. I never will.
I know, but it happens a lot. It happens, and perhaps that's also because a lot of films too. I think, I don't want to get into cinema theory, but I think a lot of cinema in the last 15, 20 years has been very, very strongly influenced by television. And I think they're sort of thinking of shots that way, not using the medium for it to its greatest or perhaps even more traditional capacity, which is for big space.
Even watching your film, like, it just reminds me of older movies that use the location more as a character. Even like going back to, like, you know, a movie like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Right. That was what, 45 years ago, and that's like a totally, you don't see much of that nowadays. Like this movie's another example of that, but you don't see a lot of that now. It's all like very enclosed and That's right. And I think this ties into part of this vision around the whole feminine nature and the presence of the earth. And I mean, most of the population, especially in the West, lives in urban centers. So that's not part of the vocabulary anymore. And actually the next film that we're making, we're going to shoot here in Ireland. And I can tell you, we're going wide again, because the sea, when you live in Ireland, is a big deal. And the sea all over our planet is a big deal. It's a big presence. And it affects everything. It affects our weather. And we're not aware of it because we're all in our little boxes in front of our screens. So I don't know. But the earth is a great inspiration, I think, to both
Johnny and me, and I think part of this cycle, this vision of a cycle of films.
So now you said I was actually going to ask you there what you were planning next. So your next film you're going to be shooting in Ireland, right there in Ireland. You said.
Yes. Yeah.
And is that good? You think that's going to is that going to present like a more of a challenge? Because I don't know anything about Ireland, like film tax credits, anything like that. Is that more of a challenge there, or less so, or?
There's a very generous tax credit here. For Johnny and me, it's going to be like reinventing the wheel, because I think every country has a different vocabulary, and obviously it will mean creating a whole new network of people to work with. We are going to take our DP with us. Yeah, we'll be back raising money again. Yeah.
We would probably we'll be required to create some kind of co-production structure to shoot in Ireland, and the rebate is very like Jennifer says, very generous. They're really trying to attract productions there. So
I'm a dual national, so.
Okay, yeah, that's beneficial, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I was going to say that's up here in Canada. We're having the same thing. We're having a lot of American productions shooting up here,
especially now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Our dollar's not doing so well.
Yeah. So it's an interesting time to be alive, because we are truly global. We have access to technology, ways to raise money that have never been possible before. We'll see. I mean, it's really a time for I think independent filmmakers to really sort of take their destiny into their own hands, because really the structure of the industry, the business is changing quite rapidly.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that the secret to it all is, and this is why also being the first film, this is also probably the most difficult one, because we've devoted a lot of time and energy to finding and building an audience, and so we hope to bring that audience along with us as we sort of journey forwards.
Well, I mean, I want to wish you the best of luck on your journey then.
Thank you, Brendan.
It's an excellent movie. Let me know if you ever I know you're doing the festival circuit right now, but I mean, is there a plan to go VOD or anything like that in the future?
Yes, there is. So
okay,
later this year.
Okay, yeah, no, for sure. Let me know, or let someone know to let me know.
Okay.
And I'll definitely tell our listeners and viewers to check that out, because I want more people. I definitely want more people to see this movie. I thought it was an excellent movie.
Wonderful.
And so besides that, did you have anything else you wanted to mention you're working on in the future? Anything you wanted to kind of mention? Any plugs?
Well, I think if you can pass on the links, to the website and the Facebook and Twitter, because all our news with regard to the crowdfunding, with regard to the release, and then subsequently, as John said, I think this audience is going to go with us. That there'll be news then as to what develops next. That would be great if you can mention those or post those somewhere.
Oh, no, I certainly can, and I am going to once I wrap this up, I'm just going to keep you on the line for just a second afterwards. So.
Sure.
Okay, cool. So, I want to thank you very much for joining me, Jennifer and Johnny Corcoran. She Sings to the Stars, doing the festival circuit later this year. It'll be available. I'll provide you guys a link to check that out when that's available. And, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you, Brendan. Thank you very much.